What up, fam? It's your girl, Natalie, the Keto Bikini Pro, back with another Monday Masterclass. And y'all, it's been 2 weeks because last week your girl was under the weather. It was no bueno. Or has it only been one? Did I do one last week anyway? No, I canceled it last week, right? I don't know. The weeks are totally running together, but I had the flu for about a week and a half. So I'm back, finally back. I'm going to say I am back to 100%. I'm claiming it. I did my first workout today. I did my accessory day. If you know, you know. My academy ladies know. It's my favorite day of our current training program. So I'm so happy to be back and back doing master classes again. So tonight's topic is maybe the thing I'm maybe most passionate about lately, these days, the things that my ladies in the academy hear me harping on all the time, and more and more and more of our members are embracing. And I'm even thinking about doing a challenge of some sort related to this topic. So we'll get into that in a little bit. But tonight we are talking about maintenance, the maintenance phase, if you want to call it that. But I will just openly just call it maintenance because a lot of the time, the way I think about it, the way I talk about it, the goal, in my opinion, is maintenance for the rest of your life. So it doesn't have to be a phase. It can be a very, very long phase of the rest of your life. So, okay, let me not jump ahead of myself here. Let me say hello to those who are on live with me. What is up, Karen, Diane, Erica, Secret Garden Essentials. Fun YouTube name. Amanda's on. Amanda is hype right now. I love it. Heck yeah. I know Amanda is here for this topic. Jody is on. What is up, ladies? All right. So a little intro to our topic tonight. Demystifying maintenance is what I'm calling this because, well, it's 2025. So 3 years ago, I did this topic in September 2022, and recently just randomly came across an old thumbnail going through old photos and remembered that I did this topic because I believe I have now done a master class on every single one of what I would consider the bodybuilding phases or the phases of or seasons of a bodybuilder's year or season, whatever you want to call it, because it's not always necessarily in a calendar year. But if you are a bodybuilder and I will define that as not necessarily a competitive bodybuilder, but you are building your body. You're a person who cares about building your body. You're a bodybuilder. So for bodybuilders, anybody building their body, there are certain seasons that we talk about, and that is cutting season, which is our fat loss phase. That is building season, or what some call bulking, what I do not call bulking, and we're going to get into that tonight a little bit. Bulking or building season, or for competitive bodybuilders, they call that the off season or the improvement season. That's where you're focused on muscle gains. And then we have what I call recomp, which is recomposition, body recomposition. We are changing the composition of your body. We are striving for muscle gains and fat loss. And most of the women out there that I come across, especially those who are new in our world, want both. I want to, when I ask new members who come into the academy, what is your main goal? Fat loss, muscle gains. They always say both. I want both. That is the pinnacle. We all want to gain muscle and lose body fat. And when you understand body composition, then that naturally would be your goal, because you understand that by putting more muscle on and taking fat off, that's how you get that shapely, toned, fit, healthy, tight, look that we're all looking for, that lean and mean look we're looking for. Curves in all the right places, let's say. So recomp can be a part of maintenance, and maintenance can be the same as recomp. So we'll talk a little bit about that tonight. So I've now done a masterclass on all of those. And I thought, and I did do a masterclass on maintenance before, and it's been many years. And I went back to find that masterclass. And y'all, it does not exist anywhere. I believe that was when I was still doing live videos in the Facebook group in events. And at one point, Facebook did away with that. And I suppose I did not download the original video because I do not have it on my Zoom files. I don't have it on my YouTube. It is nowhere to be found. So I thought, well, it's been a while anyway. It's a good time to refresh and bring back this topic because it's such a hot topic for so many of our clients and members and our greater community, all of you out there who are working toward changing your body. Essentially, we call it transformation, right? Transforming your body. If you don't just want to lose weight and look like skin and bones or hanging skin from losing a lot of weight, but you actually want to change the shape of your body and look fit, then that's what you're here for. That's what you come here for, because we talk about getting fit, getting lean, getting toned, all those terms that we hear thrown around. So, all right, so tonight's topic, maintenance. What is maintenance? We're going to talk about what is a maintenance phase. The main point I want to get across here about the importance of a maintenance phase. Why do you do a maintenance phase? So we're going to talk about the when you should do a maintenance phase, why you should do a maintenance phase, how to do a maintenance phase. Ultimately, the big why is that, y'all hear me talk about the big why a lot, but the big why in this case is you don't want to be yo-yoing for the rest of your life. Most women in our 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s have been yo-yo dieting for as long as we can remember. Going on a diet to lose weight, lose fat, and then we put the weight back on and we take it back off, and it's a constant year after year, or sometimes multiple times a year cycle, and it's exhausting. And many of you have probably experienced the fact that every time you go back to do another diet for fat loss or a weight loss phase or weight loss journey or whatever the heck you want to call it, it is harder than the last time you did it. I hear this and I see this all the time, especially in keto groups. I did keto before. It seemed to work like magic. And now it's a lot harder. I'm doing it again, but this time I'm not losing. Why? Why did it work before and now it's not working? And just because I see this in keto groups all the time doesn't mean this is unique to a ketogenic diet. The same things are being said in all kinds of diets. Keto, carnivore, low carb, low fat, vegan, whatever diet you choose to lose weight. You did that diet once. The next time you go back to do it again, it's not as easy as it was the last time. And every single time you diet again, it gets harder and harder to get results. So what happens? You chase after new fads, the new magic trick, the new magic pill, new protocols, whatever the hot new way of dieting is, because this time you think this is going to be the magic. This is going to make all the difference. And now I'm going to get the results. The truth is you're just doing more and more and more extreme things, going more extreme in your efforts, which is only going to make it harder and harder to get results the next time you try. So the last thing you need to be doing, and the one thing I want you all to stop doing for the rest of your life, is to never yo-yo diet again. So this masterclass, the main reason why I'm doing this, is to teach you how to never put it back on after a diet again. Not to exit a fat loss phase and regain the weight, particularly the body fat. So now you have to take it off again. I see lots of people having results on a diet, but they can't maintain those results. So when we're talking about maintenance, that's really what we mean. Maintaining the results that you have gotten from the efforts that you've put in. So I have some notes from the last time I did this masterclass, but I'm going to revisit those in a little bit because it's not really exactly what I want to get across right now. So we'll touch on those in a little bit, but first I want to start with what I always like to start with, which is defining our terms. So what is maintenance? What do we mean by maintenance? You could say, and I think maybe a misconception out there about maintenance, and Erica addressed this in her question that she had for us tonight, which is about, maybe I should just read that question. I'll read that question in a moment. So the misconception I see about maintenance is that it means not making progress or not working toward a goal. That being in maintenance means you're just staying where you are. You're not improving, you're not changing, you're not optimizing, you're done, right? A lot of people have the very poor misconception that being done with a diet means, going into maintenance means I'm done dieting, I'm done with weight loss. While I would definitely say that it is synonymous with being done with weight loss, and I would love for that to be the mantra. I'm done with weight loss. I would love to hear that die. But we tend to associate that with now not having a goal, not working towards something, and just staying the same. That if I'm in maintenance, I'm just staying the same. Nothing is changing or improving. And that is not true. That could not be farther from the truth when you're doing a maintenance phase right. Okay, so I'm going to teach you tonight how to do it right so that maintenance for you does not have to mean stagnation. And there really truly is no such thing as staying the same. You're always either moving forward or moving back. You're growing, you're improving, you're changing, you're evolving, or you are slipping. There really is we don't want to be stagnant. We don't want to be complacent, okay? So that's not what we're talking about when we say a maintenance phase. Now, I will caveat that by saying that one of the times that would be a good time to go into a maintenance phase or to focus on maintenance or stop trying to diet would be when you are in a season of life that is exceptionally stressful, exceptionally busy. Of course, everyone is busy all the time. So there's never going to be a time where you're not busy, where nothing's going on, where life is just chill, where everything slows down. We always say, oh, when life slows down. The truth is it's not going to. If you're waiting for life to slow down to take action toward anything you want, you're going to wait until you're dead. Life is real slow when you're dead. But while you're still alive, life is going to life, okay? So I'm not talking about, the everyday busyness of life means you should be in maintenance. But let's take, for example, let's say you're getting married, you're having a baby, and you're moving, and you had a death in the family, and like big, huge life events. Those are generally, in my opinion, not the best time to be embarking on a very focused goal like fat loss in particular. And we're going to talk about why in a moment, because in a fat loss phase in particular, you are putting your body under a lot of stress. So it's not the time to be chasing after a big weight loss goal. Okay. All right. So let's talk first about when. Oh, I guess I didn't officially define it yet, did I? Okay. I told you what it's not. It's not a time of stagnation. It's not a time to say, I'm giving up on my goals. I'm not going to have any goals. I'm just going to live life and be at maintenance. Okay. You get to determine for yourself the criteria for, oh, that's for when. Okay, hang on. See, I still have last time's notes messing with my flow here. Okay, here's what here's how I would like to define a maintenance phase that is not defined as a period of time where we're not working toward a goal. Okay. While I would say 100%, it is a time you are committing to not losing weight. You do need to commit in a maintenance phase to not be seeking weight loss. That is part of the definition. But the simple definition I'd like to offer is maintenance means eating adequate nutrition to support your body's optimal function. I'm going to say that again. A maintenance phase, or eating at maintenance, or being at maintenance, being in maintenance, however you want to call that, is eating adequate nutrition to support your body's optimal function. So with that definition, shouldn't it be all of our goal? All of us, shouldn't we all have the goal of always eating adequate nutrition to support our body's optimal function? Shouldn't that always be the goal? I think so. Okay. So, in that definition, maintenance has nothing to do with goals for your body in terms of seeking a weight loss goal, seeking a particular weight on the scale in particular. It has nothing to do with fat loss. But does that mean you can't have body goals and maintenance? Does that mean that you have to give up on your goals? If the definition of maintenance is eating adequate nutrition to support your body's optimal function, then optimizing your body's function in many different ways can be goals. So I would say that in a maintenance phase, the best thing you can do, because a lot of the time we feel listless and demotivated or uninspired if we don't have a goal to work toward. I truly believe that as humans, we were all put on this earth to grow and learn and evolve and change, not to stay the same. So being in maintenance does not mean we just don't have goals anymore. But it does mean that we set goals that are not related to the weight on the scale, not related to fat loss, and may or may not be related to our body composition. But you don't have to give up on body composition goals when you're in maintenance either. It's simply giving up the goal of weight loss. That is the only goal that we're asking you to give up when you enter a maintenance phase. To be okay with the scale not going down. Okay, so you can set goals for muscle gains in a maintenance phase. You can set goals for performance, and I love performance goals for a maintenance phase. Whether that is a specific lift you want to get better at in your bodybuilding training, in your weight training, whether you want to take up a new type of training, a new hobby, like maybe CrossFit or obstacle course races or strongman or powerlifting or any physical activity goal, performance goal that would require you to work toward physical fitness in different realms is a great goal for a maintenance phase. Now, I'm not a huge fan of endurance cardio type sports like long distance running, marathons, or even triathlons. But for some people, that's their thing. And I could say, if you're in a maintenance phase, then there you go. You could add those kinds of things in there too, if that's what you love doing. For other people, it might be rock climbing or hiking or swimming. Anything. Pickleball is a big, huge one these days that a lot of people are into. So whatever your sport of choice or simply things you want to get better at in your life, you're not super mobile, you want to work on your mobility, you want to work on flexibility, you want to take up yoga, all these kinds of things. Any of those can be a physical performance goal you're working towards. So you can set so many different kinds of performance goals. And I love that for maintenance because it takes the focus off of just the way you look. You're not just focused on your body and your aesthetics. It's, can I improve this lift? Can I improve the way I move? For me, it's dance, right? My off season, which is what I'm terming my main gains or my gaintaining season, which we'll get into in a minute because that has to do with Erica's question. As a competitive bodybuilder, my goal is always to build more muscle. I will be striving to build more muscle for the rest of my life. And I think all women should strive to build more muscle for the rest of our lives, because if we don't, then as our hormones decline and we get older, we will actually lose it. So we need to do all that we can to maintain it and our bone density as well. So that is always going to be a goal of mine. But when I'm in off season, meaning I don't have shows coming up, I don't have to focus my efforts in training and cardio and certain things to get to stage, that's when I have more flexibility in my schedule, in my activities. And that's when I like to go back to dance classes. And then I have physical performance goals as it relates to dance. So that's an example there. So, okay. So you can absolutely have goals. You can absolutely continue to work towards something in a maintenance phase. And I would encourage you to do so, not to allow yourself to become complacent, because what happens, it's one of, and I don't know if this is in my list, but I have a list from my last masterclass on this that I'm going to go through in a little bit, why people don't maintain their results. And that is a big one right there, is not having a goal, letting go of the goal, and then everything else kind of slips, because now you're not focused on something. You're not looking at anything. You're not looking at improving anything. It's like, I'm just going to live my life now. And what happens when you do that? All of a sudden, health and fitness starts to go to the back burner more and more, and you're letting more and more things slip. You get more sedentary. Usually it ends up also bleeding into the diet, where you end up eating more and more junk. And the next thing you know, you put the weight back on. But we'll get into the other reasons why people don't maintain the results in a little bit. So, okay. First question is when? When is a good time to go into maintenance? And the way I get asked this question a lot is, how do I know that I've reached my goal and it's time to go to maintenance? Okay, so this is very subjective, and this is where I say you get to define your criteria. Couple of times that I would look out for. Obviously, if you feel that you have reached your goal, meaning you are happy with where your body's. I know this is the way it is for Erica right now. She's like, you know what? I really love my body right now. Look at how far I've come. Look at what I've achieved. I have arrived. I don't need to keep striving for more and more weight loss on the scale, more and more fat loss. She used the term in our group, do I need to get shredded? Because it's about to be summer. You're going to see all these summer shreds coming up, summer challenges. We're going to do our own summer challenge, but I retitled it last year Summer Shape Up because I want to take the emphasis off of shredding, that we don't always need to be shredding. And that's also because when in the academy, nobody is required to be focused on fat loss at any particular time. We meet you where you are, regardless of any of the challenges we do, any of the programs we do. While we may title them a certain way or focus on a certain thing, it doesn't mean everybody needs to be working toward the same goal at the same time. So even when we do our Summer Shape Up, and I'm getting ready to roll out the next Prep for Summer program, which we're turning into a challenge this year, it doesn't mean because we're prepping for summer, that means you have to be in fat loss. Okay, so all that to say, one of the times that it's time to go to maintenance is you have reached your goal that you've been working toward. You've reached a certain level of fat loss and you are ready to say goodbye to fat loss because you're happy with where you are. And maybe you want to change your goal to muscle building, which I know is part of Erica's goals. And Amanda and so many of our other ladies have decided, I'm done with weight loss. I'm ready to be done with weight loss. I'm ready to focus on muscle building. So you're ready to switch your focus. You're ready to let go of fat loss and you're happy with where you are. Or you have been dieting, cutting in a fat loss, weight loss phase for a long time. And you are exhausted. You're hungry, you're tired, you're not functioning optimally, and it's slowed down. You're hitting plateaus. You're having a really hard time on your journey, continuing to lose fat loss, continuing to lose fat. At that stage, it is a good time to take a break. And we're going to talk about a question Amanda had about how to come up to maintenance in terms of bringing your intake up, right? As I talked about it being adequate nutrition. You're eating adequate nutrition for optimal function. In a fat loss phase, you are not eating adequate nutrition for optimal function. You are under consuming, which we'll get to in a moment. So when you've been dieting for a really long time and you're burned out, if you're like, you know what, I am burned out on fat loss, I'm burned out on being on a diet, I'm burned out on being in a cut. You're hungry, you're tired, you're craving, you're battling urges to binge, or maybe you are binging. These are all signs it's time to exit a fat loss phase, especially if you're noticing negative biofeedback like you're losing your hair, you are cold all the time, you are hungry, hangry, exhausted, you have no energy. These are all signs that you've been cutting for too long, or you're in too deep of a cut, too deep of a deficit, and you need to bring your body back up to maintenance, okay? Which is what we call a reverse diet or a metabolic restoration phase, which I forgot to say that earlier when I was talking about the different phases. Metabolic restoration would be the phase that you're looking for, a reverse dieting phase. And I do believe I did a masterclass specifically on that as well, but I will touch on that tonight. Oh, I love this, Amanda. As soon as my thighs stop rubbing, I am there. Oh, that's awesome. And y'all, she's not talking about getting a thigh gap. But I feel you, girl. I know what you're talking about. I was that girl with the thigh rubbing and the chafing. It is so uncomfortable. So I get it. I totally feel you. I love it. There's a good non-scale sign, right? Oh, that's awesome. Okay, so yeah, you ultimately get to determine that. So that means for my ladies who still have a good bit of fat to lose, but you're burned out on dieting, even if you're only burned out on dieting mentally, even if your body is not showing any negative biofeedback signs, because my ladies who are still, you've been Maybe you were 50% body fat. Maybe you were 40, 45, and you've gotten down to 30 or 35% body fat. But you're still over 30% body fat. You still have 20, 30, 50 pounds to go before you get to your, I hate to use the term, but goal weight or, body goals, let's call it, right? You can still enter a maintenance phase. And here's a phrase that I used, I believe, on Coffee Chat yesterday with Bronson. And I know I've used it other places as well. I know inside the academy, because this blew some minds. If I would really like to say 100% of women, but I will say 90% of women would get better results in terms of body transformation, actually transforming the way your body looks and performs. You would get better body transformation if you committed to not dieting for weight loss for an entire year, and instead you entered a maintenance phase or a metabolic restoration phase to go to maintenance, and then stayed in maintenance for an entire year after you've found maintenance through metabolic restoration. If you were to commit to staying in maintenance, not chasing fat loss, weight loss, scale loss for an entire year, and you did the things I'm going to talk about tonight with training, with diet, with lifestyle, you would be amazed. You would have a completely different body in 12 months without dieting, without cutting calories, cutting food, going on any fad diets, going on any cleanses or the latest sardine fast or whatever it might be. Giving up all of that to just be in maintenance for an entire year, you would get more transformational results that way than continuing to try to diet. And then likely yo-yoing up and going back and forth. Okay, so that being said, when is a good time to go into maintenance? Anytime. But especially if you're pretty happy with where you are, or you're very happy with where you are, you're not seeking more fat loss, you're ready to embrace gains, you're ready to embrace anything other than focusing on fat loss, or you're burned out on dieting, you're burned out on weight loss, fat loss. Okay, I love it. Erica's in. She said, that is my plan. Maintenance for a year and train hard. Oh, girlfriend. It's going to be so exciting. And I know that she's taking pictures. So this is going to be cool, because all my ladies in the academy who are doing this, and many of them are, they've committed to 6 months or they've committed to a year. It's going to be incredible to show the before and after and be able to put no dieting involved. This before and after happened without dieting, because it's possible. That's what we call body recomposition, as I was alluding to earlier. And I do have a separate masterclass on body recomp and on the mindset for body recomp, because it can be a real mind F. So that is a great one. I will post some of the related masterclasses to this topic in the description after the live, so y'all can check those out, because those will really help with the concepts I'm talking about here tonight. So reverse dieting, recomp, building phases, all of that will help extrapolate on what I'm saying here tonight. Okay, so that's the when. The why. So I alluded to this earlier as well. In a fat loss phase, you are essentially starving your body of the energy it needs to maintain optimal function. So as I described, maintenance being a place where you are eating adequate nutrition to support your body's optimal function, in a fat loss phase, because we are cutting back on our intake, particularly our fuel intake, but and a mistake many people make is pulling back on everything, including protein, which is a mistake in a fat loss phase, but I digress. Pulling back on our fuel, pulling back on our overall intake. What does that mean? It means we can get fewer nutrients into our body. When we are eating less, we are not getting as much nutrition. Particularly when we are eating less whole real foods, which if you're starting out eating whole real nutrient-dense foods and you go into a cut, you're going to be cutting some of that nutrition, some of those nutrients out, right? So now we are in a place of not only just not getting the adequate micronutrition from our food, also not getting the macronutrition, our macronutrients, but we're not getting enough fuel. So when we are in a fat loss phase, in order to tell our bodies, hey, take the fat out of the storage and use it for fuel, we need to not have enough fuel. We need to not be putting enough fuel into our bodies for them to be able to function optimally. So they need to go, the body needs to go looking for fuel, which is why and how we lose fat. Your body is underfueled, meaning it does not have enough energy to do what it needs to do. So it goes looking for energy. So it taps into your body fat and releases the body fat into the system to get energy from that. So that you are literally starving your body of energy. That's why we call it a deficit. I like to call it an energy deficit rather than calling it a calorie deficit, because we are deficient of the amount of energy we need to carry out our daily activities optimally and for all of the functions of our body. I'm not just talking about our ability to move around with our musculoskeletal system. I'm talking about all the functions of the body, the brain, the neurological system, the endocrine system, our hormones, our digestive system, literally every system of the body needs energy to function. So being in a fat loss phase for a long period of time is not a healthy place to be long term. So enter maintenance. All right, let's now talk about the hows. I'm going to dive back up to the questions from Amanda and Erica to help guide this discussion. So Amanda's question is about the how, and I'm going to get to that in a moment. Can you go over the protocol for increasing calories or increasing fuel? So I will talk about that in a moment. But first, let's dive a little deeper into Erica's question, which was, what I talked about earlier. This is what Erica said, the word maintenance suggests the idea of keeping things status quo. At least in my mind. But what benefits can we achieve in our performance and visual results in the gym or with our program if we are eating for maintenance? Because the strong narrative among many seems to be you need to pick one path or the other, build or cut. And certainly no one wants a lot of hard work in the gym to go to waste. She says, but my gut tells me it's not that simplistic and that training at maintenance level of nutrition just merely maintains your muscles. But I'd love to hear more about that idea. Yes. So let's first dive into this. And this does get into the how a little bit, in that, as I talked about earlier, I like to call it building versus bulking, because the way the bodybuilding world community likes to talk about it, they would like to have you believe that you need to be bulking, you need to be eating a lot more, you need to be in a surplus. And when they say in a surplus, they mean a caloric surplus, meaning excess food, excess fuel, particularly fuel, more. And most traditional bodybuilders are going to talk about more carbs, or on keto, we'd be talking about more fat. Or if you're eating a more balanced approach, then we're talking about more carbs and fat, more fuel, okay? I have to say this on every masterclass, I feel, because a lot of people get it mixed up. Protein is not fuel. Protein is materials, building blocks. Protein is used by the body to literally build the structures of your cells, of your body. Your muscles, all your muscles, but all the tissues of your body. The amino acids are building blocks. Think of the protein like the bricks If you're building a house, the protein is the bricks, the materials being used to build the house. The fats and the carbs are the workers. They're the people doing the work, expending the energy. Okay? It's not that. I was about to say they're the ones bringing the materials, but it doesn't really work that way in the body. Let's just say you have the building blocks, the bricks, and then you have the fuel. Okay? So what is providing energy to your body is not protein. Protein does not provide energy to the body. Fats and carbs' role is to provide energy for the body, among other things. There's other roles, but for simplicity's sake, and as it relates to maintenance versus surplus versus deficit, what we're generally talking about is the fuel part of that equation, the fats and carbs or carbs. So when you are exiting a fat loss phase, pause. Let me go back to Erica's question about, essentially the question is, can you build muscle at maintenance, or do you have to be in a surplus to build muscle? Everyone in the bodybuilding space is going to tell you must be in a surplus. You must have excess fuel to be able to put on muscle. That is not true, because what drives muscle growth are three things: stimulus. So you have to have the stimulus, you have to have the work. So hard training, training with progressive overload, training progressively to create the stimulus to build the muscle. Protein, the bricks, the materials, the raw materials to build the muscle, and recovery. Protein is actually part of recovery. It's part of how you recover. You have these materials available for your body to use to repair the tears that you're getting in the gym when you're training. So, muscle building stimulus, protein, and recovery. We could even just say stimulus and recovery, because protein is actually a part of both of those. Eating enough of a bolus of protein at one sitting, at least bare minimum 30 grams of protein per meal, is going to drive a muscle building stimulus all on its own, even if you're not training. Training all on its own is going to send the muscle building signal. When you pair protein and training, now you're getting double, essentially. And your body needs protein for part of the recovery process. So protein's a part of all of it, but consider it like that: stimulus, protein, recovery. Okay, recovery also meaning that we're not training every day. We're not overtraining. We're taking rest days. We're adequately taking rest times in between our lifts. We are following a progressive program that incorporates recovery. So we're not doing too much so that we can't recover from it. It also means we need to not be overstressed, living in sympathetic chronic stress state. We need to have times where we're coming down into parasympathetic. We need to sleep. We need to calm down and not constantly be going. So all of those things are how we build muscle. So none of that has anything to do with fats or carbs. None of that has anything to do with the fuel coming in, except for this. The only way fuel relates to muscle building is that we have adequate fuel so that we can perform in our training. Because if we're not able to progressively overload, we're doing the same thing all the time. If the stimulus doesn't change, because we're not asking our body to do more, we're not asking our body to overcome any obstacle, any challenge, it's not going to grow. And that's the same with performance and with muscle building. If you perform the same way all the time, you're not going to improve your performance. If you lift the same way every time, you're not going to stimulate muscle growth. So the perfect way I can illustrate this is that in a fat loss phase, when you are not eating adequate energy, you're not eating adequate fuel to fuel your optimal function, you're starving your body of energy so that it takes from its own fat stores. At some point, especially for my individuals who are already in a healthy body fat level, the more fat you have on your body, the more leeway you have here, and the more ability you will have to recomp even in a fat loss phase, because you have so much energy to tap into on your body in the form of fat. But the leaner you are, the less you have to tap into, so you actually need to eat more of it to be able to function optimally. So that being said, in a fat loss phase, you're eventually not going to be able to perform your best. The beginning of a fat loss phase, if you're taking a cautious approach, which is the way I do it, I don't go into massive deficits right away. We don't cut 500 calories immediately and all of that. We take a stepwise approach. If you're doing that kind of approach, you're not going to feel that for a while. I don't start feeling weak in my lifts, in my prep, until I'm like in the last 2 weeks. It's not usually until right at the end where I really start losing steam. So you can be in a fat loss phase and still be creating the proper output to be driving muscle growth, even in a fat loss phase. But it will be more and more difficult to build muscle the leaner you are with less and less fuel. Let's just put it that way. And Bronson and I got into that a little bit on yesterday's coffee chat. So eating adequate nutrition in a maintenance phase and in a maintenance range, you are ensuring that you are getting adequate nutrition and adequate fuel to have the energy to perform your best, to progress in your training, to progress in your physical endeavors, to improve your physical performance so that you can grow. And that will drive muscle growth without needing to be in a 500 calorie surplus, as you always hear in the bodybuilding space. So I talk more about this as well on the building season masterclass, because I think it's highly unnecessary and quite detrimental for most of us to embrace the bulking mentality and overdo it with our food, overeat in the name of bulking, thinking that that's what we need to do to put on muscle. That's how you end up putting on that 20 pounds of body fat and now having to take it off again. And that is a lot of stress on your body to always have to be on this roller coaster up and down. So cutting and bulking, is it necessary? No. Also, we have to consider, who are we hearing this from, okay? When we are talking about competitive bodybuilders at the highest levels, pro bodybuilders, highly competitive, lean, fit individuals, they are already living at everybody else's dream physique. So if you don't have goals of getting on stage and getting to insane, unnatural levels of muscle and body fat, you don't need to do what these bodybuilders are doing. They are throwing, this is why so many of them are also on performance enhancing drugs. And mind you, a lot of the bulking and cutting, where that even came from was because of performance enhancing drugs. Because the body handles things differently when you are pumped full of anabolic steroids and all of these SARMs and all these different things. They're changing the way your body is functioning. So a lot of the protocols in the bodybuilding world, including all of the peak week, water loading, carb manipulation, all of that came from cycling PEDs. Because on drugs, your fluid balance is different. So, think about all of that when you consider what they're telling you to do this with the bulking and cutting. First and foremost, the grand majority of the population never has to go on a bulk and a cut. But when you are already at essentially everybody else's dream body and you're trying to get this 1% improvement every year, you go more to one extreme or more to the other to try to get this enhanced benefit beyond what the typical person would be able to achieve. And even in that situation, I think it's highly unnecessary. I don't ever plan to put on as much weight as I've put on in past off seasons because it then takes a lot longer to get it back off. It's more grueling. It's a much more stressful, longer period of time and a longer process and exhausting to take all that fat back off. So all you're doing when you're bulking in these high surpluses is putting yourself in a situation where you're gaining more body fat. It's not going to do what some of you might think it does. It's not going to accelerate your muscle growth that much. It's really not. You don't grow muscle that fast unless you are on performance enhancing drugs. And in which case, that's, like I said, where the bulking idea came from. So you do not need to be in a surplus. That being said, let's talk about a little bit of the nitty gritty and getting into Amanda's question about, essentially how to find maintenance. There is a lot of misconception around what maintenance level of calories or maintenance level of food intake, what that looks like, and how do you find it, and how do you know what maintenance is? A few things I want to point out. First, maintenance is not a specific number of macros, a specific number of calories. Your maintenance is not exactly 1,805 calories and this many grams of protein and this many grams of fat and this many grams of carbs. It doesn't work that way. It's not like if you're 10 grams off or 5 grams off of something or 50 calories off, now you're no longer in maintenance. It's not that tightly controlled, okay? Maintenance is a range. So while, and think about it like this, whenever you have been seeking fat loss and striving for fat loss and it wasn't happening, nothing was changing, you were not losing body fat, you were not losing weight, you were at maintenance. That's all that means, is that you were at maintenance. You were eating at maintenance. And it's not just eating either. Let me just also mention that, because I haven't mentioned that yet. There is another side to this equation, and it's the whole calories in, calories out. It's not that simple. Nothing is ever that simple, but it's the concept of there's how much you're eating, particularly the fuel piece, and how much energy you are expending throughout your day with your daily activity, with your what we call NEAT, your non-exercise activity, thermogenesis, with your basal metabolic rate, just how much your body is going to burn at rest. So all of these things are playing in as well. So the activity side of it is also a huge part of that equation. How much activity you have going on, how much you are expending. And that is something I will tell you not to try to calculate. You're never going to get it right. You're never going to have it exact. So don't try to worry about calculating calories in, calories out. Okay. First pro tip I'm going to give you for finding maintenance is not to plug your information into an online calculator, a TDEE calculator, or a BMR calculator, or a, any kind of calculator to tell you what you should be eating at maintenance, what you should be eating in fat loss, and what you should be eating for gains. Don't listen to those calculators. They're all based on algorithms. They're all just guesstimating based on information you give it. but it doesn't know you and it doesn't know what's actually happening in your life. So if you're a person who's not currently tracking, regardless of what season you're currently in, if you're in a fat loss phase, if you haven't been doing anything, you haven't been looking at anything, so clearly you're in maintenance, or maybe you're gaining because you've just been doing whatever you want to do, the first thing you need to do is start tracking what you're already doing. And I know my ladies are already doing that. So if you have been in a fat loss phase and you have been losing body fat, losing weight, and you haven't been tracking because maybe you're just following carnivore or keto or whatever, start tracking what you are currently consuming and make note. Doesn't have to be with numbers, but make note of your daily activity. What does your daily activity look like? I like to at least use some kind of wearable that gives you a step count. It's something that helps you determine that. Not talking calories, just how much am I moving throughout the day? What am I doing for my workouts? What am I doing for exercise, fitness, cardio? Take stock of how much expenditure, how much you are expending, not in calories, but in what does my activity look like right now? Make note of that, write that down somewhere. And look at how much you're consuming in macros, in calories, using a nutrition tracking app like my favorite, Chronometer. All right, track what you're doing, track what your body is doing, how it's responding to it. If you're losing, you are in a deficit. If you are maintaining, you are in maintenance. If you're gaining, you are in a surplus. That's how you answer that question of am I in a surplus? Am I in a deficit? Am I in maintenance? That's how you know. And when I say gaining or losing, are you gaining or losing? The way we do it is we look at your weight daily, and then we take a weekly average over the 7 days of that week. And we look week to week to see what is the trend doing, because any 2 points in time are not going to tell you whether or not you're gaining or losing. It's just comparing this particular Saturday to that particular Saturday. Okay, so take your biometrics, take your consumption, understand where you're starting from, okay? Amanda's question was in regards to coming out of a fat loss phase and essentially reverse dieting. So what is the process of reverse dieting? It's very, very simple. And I do have a masterclass so you can dive in on all the details about it, but it's super simple. It's as simple as you keep your protein the same. If you're on keto levels of carbs and you are not ready to play with carbs, which I would say in a reverse diet, it's not the time to start adding carbs in. If you do want to start adding carbs in eventually, don't do it during a reverse diet. So if you want to go the reverse diet route, you would just start bringing your fat up. For my people on low carb, keto, carnivore, whatever your current low carb style of eating is, if you're just starting to pull out of a fat loss phase and you want to go about it with a reverse diet, which is, let me just say what a reverse diet is, right? I talked about metabolic restoration earlier. It is slowly bringing your intake up, your fuel intake up, calories, if you will, to find your maintenance, meaning find where you stop losing weight, you stop losing body fat, and you are able to maintain without gaining. So when we do a reverse diet, we are trying to mitigate fat gain by not just jumping back up to what we were once eating at the beginning of our cut. So the other way of doing this would be to just go right back to old maintenance, which may not be your current maintenance, because our bodies adapt as we are in a fat loss phase, particularly if you've been in a cut for a long time. And let's say you've lost a significant amount of weight, or you've been on this cut for 6 months, a year. it's likely that your body has downregulated and gotten used to the amount that you're consuming. And so your new maintenance level is not going to be if you were eating 2,500 calories before and now you're eating 1,200 calories. If you go back up to 25, you're doubling your intake. You're likely to put back body fat on very quickly doing it that way. Now, there are times when you can do that, particularly extremely lean individuals. So extremely lean individuals who also have a significant amount of muscle mass on your body. I'm not talking about my skinny fat ladies. I'm not talking about you're really lean, but you also don't have a lot of muscle. Essentially, I'm talking about competitors. Competitors coming off of stage can stand to return to maintenance, old maintenance. This is what I did after my last show, actually. It's the first time I've ever done this. I literally started eating double what I was eating going into the show. I just went right back to my old maintenance, 2,000 to 2,500 calories, somewhere in there. Essentially doubled what I was eating. I did not put on body fat. And that gets into the next pro tip, which is do not eat junk during your reverse or coming to maintenance, finding your maintenance. So whether you decide to go the reverse diet route, meaning you're doing it slowly adding a little bit at a time, week over week. And like I said, on a low carb template, we would do that with fats first. We would start bringing the fats up. And I like to do about 10 to 15 grams at a time, same way I do it during a cut. During a cut, I pull back about 10 to 15 grams of fat at a time because fat is your fuel on a low carb protocol. So on a reverse, I would increase by 10 to 15 grams if you are not gaining. So we want to look at it over 1 to 2 weeks at a time. Did I gain this week? Did I maintain? Am I still losing? If you are maintaining and you are hungry and you are ready for more food and you know I'm not there yet, because you're going to know when you've hit maintenance when your appetite calms down, your hunger calms down, you have plenty of energy. All of those biofeedback markers we talked about for being when is a good time to go to maintenance, when those all start to improve, your outputs in the gym are getting better, you're sleeping better, all of these things, because your body's getting what it needs, you know you're getting to maintenance, okay? And ideally, we don't want to see weight gain during this time, which is why I recommend not adding carbs during this time, because adding carbs is going to add water weight, which is going to impact the scale, and then it's going to be a little bit harder to tell, you know, where you're at in that process. But slowly but surely, every, 1, 2, 3 weeks at a time, depending on how your body's responding, as long as you're not gaining, you can keep bumping up, that next 10 to 15 grams of fat. Once you start to see fat, weight come on quickly, 1 pound a week, 2 pounds in a week, and it continues over the next week, now we know for sure you're putting on body fat. You're going a little too fast, okay? So I hope that clears that up. Amanda, we can chat more about it inside the academy for sure. But that's the simple explanation of a reverse diet. All right, let's talk about some other pro tips. Like I said, I was able to quickly go back to my old maintenance because, number one, I had a lot of muscle mass. I did not lose any muscle during that cut. And I was very lean, very low body fat. So eating real, whole, nutrient-dense foods that my body can do something with, that can use the nutrients for a function, I did not put on body fat. And that's because I was not eating like an asshole. I was not eating all the sweets and the treats and, oh, now I'm off of stage and now I'm, in a building phase or letting all those things become justification and excuses for eating junk, which I've done. I've done many times in my past. So I'm not saying I'm perfect, but this last show, coming out of this last show, is the only time after a show where I had no binging, no junk food, very calculated indulgences immediately after the show while we were still in Mexico for a couple of days. And then the indulgences came out until I already established my maintenance with real whole foods, just more of what I had already been eating. So I went back to maintenance with more food. And then after I established my maintenance, okay, here's my range. And this is what I was saying earlier, is that it's a range. You're going to have a low end of maintenance. You're going to have a high end of maintenance. And anywhere within there, you can live without gaining excess body fat and without losing weight on the scale. So you're going to have to find that range for yourself. And that takes trial and error, bumping up, trying to find that high end of maintenance. Oh, now we're gaining. Okay. So that means I shouldn't go over this amount. Okay, that's my threshold there, right? So then you cap it there. And then you're like, okay, on the lower end, let's find my lower end. If you start losing again, okay, now I know where my lower end is. And I will tell you, for me right about now, I'm finding that I'm living pretty closely in the 1900 to 2100 calorie range. And what that looks like macros wise, my protein is around 140 to 150 grams, or maybe 130 to 150, anywhere within there, which is above my body weight in protein. So I'm eating, I'm currently sitting around 118 pounds. So I'm eating about, anywhere from 10, 15 to 30 grams of protein above how many pounds I weigh in body weight. And that stays the same. Like, I'm not changing my protein. I'm not trying different things, going lower or higher. My protein stays the same. And then now I'm starting to play with carbs. That was another thing. That was another pro tip. I did not play with bringing carbs in too soon. Just more meat, eggs, all of my protein powder treats that I enjoy all the way through my prep. I just have more of those, more of all the things. And then my fats currently are sitting around 140, probably 150 on the high end, maybe 120 on the low end. So that puts me in that, probably my highest days here and there are maybe 23 to 2,500 calories overall. And then my lowest are around 19 to 2,000. So that's a good, 500 calorie range, and I'm living in there. So you're going to have to find your range, kind of find your low and your high, and live within the middle. So pro tips, don't start adding in a lot of indulgences until after you establish what your maintenance level is. And then at that point, you can add in some indulgences, but you're still going to want to maintain that your majority of your diet is real, whole, nutrient-dense foods. And then once you've also found that maintenance range, if you want to start playing with carbs, this is where you can do what we teach inside the academy, the seesaw. You can trade some fats for carbs. And this is one of the things Erica's been playing with. She's finding her sweet spot. So this is why I like to say, on a low carb protocol, you bring the fats up first. You find your high end of maintenance with fats, keeping your carbs wherever they were, whether they were 10, your carnivore, or 25 or 50, whatever, wherever you were starting from with your carbs in a low carb protocol. Then once you've found your maintenance, and here's where your fats and carbs are, your protein's going to stay the same. Now you can say, okay, I'm going to try bringing the carbs up and bringing the fats down a little, so my overall intake still stays within the range of maintenance, but I'm testing out these carbs. When you decide to do that, that's a whole other topic. I actually did master classes on that, finding your carb tolerance, carb cycling. That is a whole different ballgame, because you're going to really have to not let the scale get in your head because of the water that the carbs will pull in. So we're not going to get into that one tonight. But Another pro tip is don't start playing with carbs right away. Don't start playing with treats and indulgences right away. What else? Okay, here's the things that were from my last masterclass. So some of the points I made about why people don't maintain their results. Okay, big thing here. Seeing goals as an end point. So you've embarked on this fat loss phase that you're, this dieting. So you're going on these diets or this exercise program or this challenge to reach a certain body goal rather than taking the process as a lifestyle change. So 9 times out of 10, the reason you have rebounded is because keto or carnivore or this fasting protocol or this thing, this fad, this cut was a means to an end for you. And when you're done with it, you're like, yay, now I can eat everything I want again. It don't work that way. You go back to your old lifestyle, you're going to go back to your old body. So that's number 1. Don't just ditch all of the healthy habits you learned to embrace to get the body you wanted. That's how you're going to lose it. You're going to lose all those results when you don't keep up with the habits that got you the results. Okay, number 2, why people don't maintain their results, getting stuck in the good enough trap. Settling for some progress, getting comfortable and complacent. So this is the idea of, maintenance means I no longer have to have a goal, and now I just live life and I'm complacent. So this I see a lot of the time with those who are coming from a metabolically unhealthy background, insulin resistance, maybe a slew of autoimmune conditions, PCOS, whatever it might be, overweight, obesity, sedentary lifestyle, like the people who really had to do a lot to change their lifestyle. I see them getting like a ways down the road. And then what do I hear all the time? I'm better than I used to be. It's better than it was. At least I'm not doing XYZ anymore. So it's a justification of, well, I did something and now I'm not as bad as I used to be. So they get complacent, and then, like I said, it starts to creep, and that usually ends up being another yo-yo because all of a sudden that weight starts coming back on because you've let go of a goal. Okay, so the first 2 kind of have to do with continuing to want to improve yourself simply because you're a human living on this earth to evolve. So don't get complacent. Okay. And then number 3, listening to all the voices, the gurus, trying to fix what's not broken. And I know Erica shared some of this with us inside the Academy about this concept of like, there always being this hot new trend, this new thing, like, wait a minute, do I need to shred? Do I really need to be, why am I attracted to this trend, right? Start asking yourself, what is attracting me to this trend and why? Do I really need it? What am I trying to achieve with this? Is that necessary? Because y'all, I will tell you, what has got me here to the best place I've ever been in at 42 years old, better than I was at 32, better than I was at 22, was committing to the boring work of eating well, moving well, sleeping well, managing my stress, learning how to self-regulate, healthy habits. It's not sexy. It's the same thing day in and day out. But guess what's so amazing about this? It's the same thing day in and day out. You don't have to think about it anymore. The beauty of maintenance is that you've established the habits and now it's just your way of life. So you can do life as usual as a healthy person, a fit person who has a healthy, fit lifestyle It's just life as usual. It doesn't take mental effort, energy, time. It's just what you do. That's the people who keep the results and get better and better and better year after year. So stop listening to the voices and thinking that the next big thing, next trend is for you. All right. And then finally, people who don't maintain the results, they use extremes to get the results. And then they cannot continue the behaviors that got them the results because it wasn't sustainable in the first place. Any kind of extreme dieting, excessive cardio, fasting, oh my gosh, hell, for some people, carnivore. You did carnivore because you thought it was going to be this magic weight loss thing, and you were never really bought into it. You never really had a reason that you needed to go carnivore. You didn't have digestive issues. You didn't have IBS. You didn't have autoimmune. You didn't have food sensitivities. You weren't sensitive to foods. It was just, I can't stick to a diet unless it's the most extreme thing that I can do. So since I can't stop eating cookies, I have to only eat beef. I know a lot of folks out there doing it like that. I'm addicted to sugar, so I have to only eat meat for the rest of my life. I mean, if you're in that deep of an eating disorder, that eating a carrot will make you binge on cookies, then I would say, okay, remove the trigger foods for now and let's work on the mindset, the mental state, the disordered thoughts while you cut these things out. But it's not the carrot that got you fat. So a lot of people are doing things they don't necessarily need to do, that they don't enjoy doing, that they suffer and struggle through just to get the weight loss. And then they wonder why they can't sustain it afterwards. The diet that works is the diet you will stick to. So if you can't see yourself doing it long term and you're only doing it as a means to an end, then I caution you and I would challenge you to really consider your reasons for choosing that diet. I am not against carnivore. I eat primarily carnivore. I have maybe one hand, maybe two hands, how many foods I consume and beverages I consume that are not carnivore, that are not animal-based. So I am primarily carnivore and I love it. And it's an incredible lifestyle, but it's not for everyone. So this is not to harp on carnivore, but anything that for you is extreme and excessive and you're not bought into and you're doing it for the wrong reasons, you're not going to be able to sustain. And then you'll be on that yo-yo string again and again and again. So to recap that piece, the pro tips. Don't make your diet a means to an end, like that diet endpoint. Now you go back to the old lifestyle. Don't get stuck in the good enough trap. It's better than what I was doing before. And Amanda has a great example here. She says, yeah, I was eating that peanut butter, like at least it's not Cheetos. And while I will say that peanut butter is higher on the spectrum of healthy foods, if you struggle to moderate it, then first of all, it's not the peanut butter, right? But there's usually a mindset now. Nuts and dairy do actually have not mechanisms. What's the word I'm looking for? They do actually have compounds in them that do drive addiction. So those foods in particular, as well as foods like Cheetos, hyper palatable processed foods that were engineered to make us want more, they do have similar properties in that they do play on our brain and make it very difficult for us to moderate those foods. Now, eventually though, you may be able to eat peanut butter in moderation and that'll be great. But any food, this is why I do encourage any food that you are struggling to moderate right now, it's there's nothing wrong with removing that food for the time being while you also do the work on the mental, on the thought processes that lead you to overeating it. Because my goal for everyone is that you would find a healthy diet and lifestyle that you can stick to forever. And in my opinion, that includes indulgences that you enjoy that make it sustainable. For me, it's dark chocolate. Sometimes it's nut butters, sometimes it's not. It's not something I do all the time, but I do love nut butters. My coconut everything. There's certain things in there that having those in my life, it makes it effortless for me to not choose to buy junk because I have these other indulgences that I enjoy and that I can now moderate. Once upon a time, I couldn't moderate them, but that was a mental thing I had to work on. Okay, and that's also something that it gets easier to moderate things that are really enjoyable for you the longer you've been outside of a fat loss phase. So that's another reason to go to maintenance, because when you're eating enough adequate nutrition to support your body's optimal function, you're less likely to have these cravings and these desires for things that are not beneficial for you. Because when we are depleting or depriving the body of fuel or nutrition in a fat loss phase, it acts on our neurotransmitters. It acts on our thought processes. It's more than just physiological, but it's also physiological. It's working within the body to, you'll notice the hunger and the cravings increase the longer you're in a deficit. So coming out of that deficit, finding that maintenance and committing to that for the long term will absolutely help with those things. And it was a game changer for me. Taking a full year not seeking weight loss or fat loss was a huge part of my recovery. So, yep. So keep setting goals. Don't get stuck in good enough. Stop following all the trends and seeking the new hot trick or magic pill, and stop going to these extremes. You will find that when you do commit to a maintenance phase, and you do, for those of you who still have fat loss, fat to lose, even though you can get some great recomp in a long-term maintenance phase by training well, recovering well, and eating enough protein and eating adequate nutrition, nutrient-dense whole foods, you will see transformation in your body. For some of you who still have a long way to go, you're still 30, 35, 40, 45, 50+% body fat, you're likely going to eventually need to go into another fat loss phase. It will be a lot easier for you, and you will not have to go to the same extremes after you've had a nice period of maintenance. And another question that I see a lot is, how long do I need to be in a maintenance phase if I am that person who still has a lot of fat to lose? Consider this. I'll leave you with this. As long as you were in a fat loss phase, you need at least that amount of time in a maintenance phase before you can go into another fat loss phase successfully. So how long was I dieting? I need at least that amount of time in maintenance before I embark on another cut. Okay, that's the rule of thumb. So I have one more takeaway summary. It's almost an hour and a half tonight. Woo! So main takeaway: to maintain your results, you must continue doing what got you those results. You may not have to do it as dialed in. What's beautiful about a maintenance phase is that when you find this nice range that you can live in for your intake, remember, you also need to keep an eye on your outputs as well, right? We don't want to get sedentary. I didn't add that, but I should add that to the pro tips. Do not allow yourself to become sedentary in your maintenance phase. That kind of, though, relates to the first one, which was don't go back to the old lifestyle. The lifestyle that got you fat was generally sedentary lifestyle with over-consuming fuel. and usually in unhealthy foods. So ultimately, though, what got you the results was changing habits, changing food choices, changing how much you were consuming and what kinds of food you were consuming, changing the way you moved your body. So if you want to maintain those results for the rest of your life, you are going to need to keep those habits in play. What you get to relax on once you've found that maintenance phase is then you can start playing with not tracking anymore, eating intuitively, moving without needing to be exact about and dialed into every little thing. Unless you have a very specific goal you want to work toward, and then you'll dial in on that particular goal. Maybe it's a particular performance related goal. But you will be able to be more flexible after you've established, okay, here's where my maintenance is. This is what my lifestyle looks like. And incorporate it into a wider life, your social life, your family, your career. You can focus on all these other things because your health and fitness endeavors just become habit that you don't have to spend a lot of mental energy or time thinking about it, planning and dialing in. That's the beauty of maintenance. And that's what the rest of your life can look like. And you can still continue to get incremental results over time. More muscle, less body fat, performance benefits, wellness benefits, optimal functioning of your brain, of your body, of your hormones. Essentially anti-aging. Age is not the reason for decline. Lifestyle is the reason for decline as we age. So, okay. Make small, sustainable lifestyle, habit, and mindset changes rather than short-term quick fixes and diet and exercise programs that are not realistic over the long term. And you will be able to maintain your results without needing to go on another cut or bulk to gain muscle. And if you want help doing that, that is what I do. That is my specialty. That is what we teach inside the academy. We teach. We don't just give. It's not just, here's your plan, go do it. Report back on what you're doing, what you're not doing. We teach you the hows, the whys, the what's, the whens, just like these master classes. We're constantly educating in there. So if you want to be in the tribe, in the squad, come on in. Membership is always open, but we are starting a new program at the beginning of May, and I will be talking about it in the upcoming masterclasses this April. That is when we start our Prep for Summer program, which, as I mentioned, we will be turning into a challenge this year. So stay tuned, and I will share more about that coming very soon. All right, ladies, that's it for tonight. Have a wonderful week, and I'll see you next Monday.